In the history of the unstable SMP, there are two players who have worked from the shadows and are unknown by those on the server. Two who have mysteriously risen to power and slowly gained control over the one person who broke them the most. Wifies and Jamato both started from similar origins, being friends with one of the protagonists since the start of the server. However, the differences that define them begin with how they respectively split up. We'll dive into why that is later. Once these players disappeared or died from the perspective of their friend, both created new versions of themselves to fulfill the goal that they deemed necessary. Two sides of the same coin. One plan, different intentions. Now, both have oddly similar prisons and tactics for preventing people from leaving. However, the differing means of manipulation are very intriguing. Wifies wants to protect Parrot from the world's dangers, while Jamato wants to protect the world from the danger of Spoke, and both would go to extreme lengths to achieve their goal. Let's start with the arguably less toxic of the two. On second thought, that's debatable. Wifies as the director has made it very clear since Season 1 that Parrot's safety was his first priority. In the midst of traveling to the far lands to stop the Mafia, Wifies does this. So, naturally, being terrified that Parrot will somehow get himself killed, he fakes his own death, kills the old version of himself, and ensures he protects Parrot at all costs, which leads him to creating Paragon, Parrot's paradise where he can find peace. So Wifies creates this world where he and Parrot can just have fun, without him worrying about Parrot getting hurt. And Wifies masterfully tests the trust in him, most notably the game of hide and seek, where he did not break his own rules, but instead bent it in his favor by explaining no blocks could be broken and preparing a spot days beforehand. And if you know Parrot, he was having none of it. He tried. He really tried. But after so many attempts, Wifies always won. Wifies' biggest strength was understanding Parrot's mind. Before the prison, he knew that Parrot always got himself into some kind of danger. So instead, Wifies created these simulations of danger for Parrot, with him ensuring that Parrot was actually safe the entire time. Now, going into the prison, he knew to keep Parrot isolated. He knew to make the Bat team into guards because Parrot wouldn't have the heart to kill them. He knew to control every part of his system by what they cared about, so that they would never stray from orders. And he even knew Parrot's entire inventory and hunger bar. Like, do you see this guy? This Wifies guy is just another breed of psychopath, guys. He's too good for an army and exploits. He doesn't even need an army and exploits. But even with all this power, he didn't take over the server. All he wanted to do was play on the server with his friend. He wanted a world where he and Parrot would stay as equals. Because of Parrot, he was willing to start playing the game from scratch. Because of Parrot, he killed the old version of himself. Because of Parrot, Wifies became calculated and manipulated him for the sake of his safety. Parrot was the foundation that Paragon was built on, but he was also the reason that Wifies and the system around him crumbled along with it. Wifies' goal this entire time had been for Parrot to buy into an illusion that everything could still be normal, a life without danger. But for Parrot, that was never a life he wanted to live. He would rather die than be stuck in a cage. So as Wifies became more morally and ideologically corrupted, he had failed to account for the one variable that broke everything: the spyglass. Way back when they first met, Parrot gave Wifies a spyglass as a symbol of trust, and throughout their friendship, that spyglass was and has always been Parrot's prized possession. And although Wifies believed that Parrot was now against everything that the spyglass stood for, it was the one item that ended up standing between Parrot and freedom. The symbol of Parrot's hope in Wifies was ultimately his own downfall. And everything that he did, manipulating Parrot and controlling him for his own safety, was all over. He knew that. From the very start, Wifies had joined the server for Parrot. Couldn't kill him, and he would never want to. And during his last moments, as he ran to hold the spyglass one last time, there may have been a twinge of regret that he could have done things differently, but it was an inevitability. Wifies would sacrifice the world, and even himself, to keep Parrot safe, every single time. Now, going back to Season 1, it's clear that Jamato was more of a mentor for Spoke than a friend, which means that from the get-go, there was already an imbalance in the established friendship, leading Jamato to feel a sense of responsibility for whatever antics Spoke got up to. Between the two, Jamato's motive is a lot harder to read than Wifies. For Wifies, we've been with him for the entirety of Season 1, while we still barely even know Jamato. However, if we read between the lines and go back to the very beginning, we'll realize Jamato was the first person Spoke ever knew on the server. The one who showed him the powers of exploits, as well as giving him the full set of exploited armor. The fact that there was so much chaos on the server because of Spoke, why he wanted to learn and become more, was Jamato's fault. Upon his return, he slowly tries to fix his past mistake by saving Mapek from being attacked, and wins Spoke's friends over by being incredibly kind, while slowly distancing Spoke from them in the process. Early on, we were given a foreshadowing of Jamato's strength and weakness. He could control and manipulate everyone around Spoke as much as he wanted, but he failed to understand the one person who he wanted to contain. As the leader of Null, Jamato is seen as a very logical and cold-hearted player. If we think about the meaning of Null, it symbolizes non-existence and emptiness. Jamato may be going through the motions of helping the server, but the truth is, he doesn't, and never has. He could have come back during the Mafia, but he didn't. He could have come back to help with the Law War, but he didn't. He is actively masking his regrets, guilt, and sense of responsibility for Spoke, and proclaiming it as justice, when it's really not. He created a monster. Wifies as the director was fulfilled. Yes, in the end he still died, but he had protected Parrot for as long as he could. And once Parrot escaped his prison, he believed that out there, Parrot would do just fine without him. Whereas Jamato is very unfulfilled, not getting to explore the server as much as he would have wanted without past events coming back to haunt him. So to deal with his conflicting feelings, he decided to embody a new version of himself and created Purgatory, a place where people who did bad on the server would be kidnapped and spend the rest of their lives. Not that he cared, but it was an excuse enough to keep Spoke far away from the main server. And since Spoke was a menace to society, the people affiliated with Spoke also must be menaces to society. And when talking to such menaces, his guard was up at all times. He was above them, and they were nobodies. He himself is aware that he created a hell for bad players to live in. But because it is so horrible to live in, of course he has a nice control room to stay in, and storage rooms with items that players could never even dream of. Oh, and a hole in the ground to commit execution, and feel his ever-growing power over his prison. What a great guy! However, this power made him complacent and desensitized to any empathy he did have before, which led to the creation of the Hunger Games arena, a last-ditch effort to break Spoke and control him by force. He decides to put Spoke through yet another hell, grasping his goal for accomplishment so tightly he failed yet again to notice that Spoke could slip through, remaining disillusioned to every trick that he tried. If he really wanted to, he could kill Spoke in a heartbeat. But he knew very well that by doing so, the server's greatest rebellion would rise from the ashes. Once Spoke had, unexpectedly, gotten his friends back, a team, and some stacked items, Jamato couldn't be beaten like this. No, no, no. He had to take it all away, break his own rules, cheat in his own game, take the majority of Spoke's items as well as his friends mid-game because he wanted Spoke to suffer more. From the very start of the server, Jamato has operated alone. Unlike Parrot and Wifies, who worked as a duo, he has always been on his own. He trusts his own instincts. He does what he thinks is right. And as Wifi's biggest weakness was attachment, Jamato's is detachment. He understands that friends are leveraged as means of control, but he doesn't know what that actually means or feels like, because Spoke is arguably the closest friend he has ever had. When he pits Spoke and Mapik to fight each other, he fully expects them to kill one another for survival, but doesn't understand why Mapik would go against him after everything that Spoke has done. Although he has no attachments and therefore can't be controlled by anyone, his inexperience causes him to fail every single time he tries to keep Spoke in check. Because Spoke understands that there is power in purposeful care and concern, compared to Jamato's power in sole control. Jamato had been consumed by power and moral corruption. Though Jamato wants Spoke off the face of the server, and uses exploits, illegal items, manipulation, and putting Spoke in actual danger every single time, he fails to understand the morals that Spoke abides by. He sacrifices thousands of players in his prison just for the chance to break Spoke's spirit. How psychotic can you be to sacrifice everyone just to break one person? And through all that, still fail to break the one person who made you lose everything. Now, if we take a look at both players, one of the most notable aspects is their armor trims, which just so happened to be the inspiration for this video. The flow armor trim in Unstable has been associated with control, which both players have mastered in different aspects. But the most intriguing part is the colors. I believe that these represent the side of the characters before and after becoming their new version. Taking a look at Wifies, he started out as Parrot's best friend. The white trim symbolize his past pure intentions. However, if we flip the connotation of the color white, it can mean obsession and destructive perfectionism, which is quite literally Paragon and the director. When we look at Jamato, he was Spoke's friend and mentor. The green trim symbolized his past intention of helping Spoke grow as a person. But once he had given up on Spoke, the green took on a new meaning of destructive corruption, which is the Hunger Games arena. Both characters took on different versions of themselves as means of control. Wifies for protection and Jamato for atonement. Both reflect a different extreme of what it means to care so much about someone or to regret not having cared enough. Wifies died living a fulfilled life. He protected Parrot for as long as he was alive, while Jamato continues to live an unfulfilled life, trying to serve a purpose that wasn't his to fulfill. So, what do you guys think? If you had to join Unstable for a week, whose prison would you rather be in? I personally think there's one infinitely better answer, but up to you guys. So, just remember, make sure your friends are not psychopaths, don't be a psychopath, and don't forget, they're always watching. Okay, so the end of this video is just gonna be a fun extra yap about some stuff I wish I included, but couldn't find exactly where in the video to put it. But it occurred to me how crazy the difference is between both characters when you are internally at peace versus internally at war. If you take a look at Wifies, he was very clear to himself and the audience why he was doing what he did, whereas for Jamato, I was going through hell trying to understand why he was the way he is for the sake of this video. And the reason I feel like I was struggling so much is because this guy doesn't even understand why he's doing everything in the first place. He's just lying to himself over and over again, saying, "This is for the greater good of the server." He doesn't care about the server! Anyways, Thank you guys so much for watching. This video was so much fun to make and was very much an experiment. But if you guys have any ideas, leave it in the comments down below. Feel free to subscribe for more fun content, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Maybe I should say flare out for the outro. Flare out.